One of the stories that caught my eye earlier this week was the fact that Cake electric motorcycles, super modern and unusual looking, I think they filed for bankruptcy. I think they were looking for more funding, basically, because they're in startup mode where they need these rounds of funding to keep going. And they didn't find it, so they filed for bankruptcy. And it's a kind of interesting one, mate, because it's got me questioning, are electric bikes even viable for companies to produce at the moment? It seems like they were operating at a loss. I think Zero operate at a loss as well. And also, if you look at things like Livewire, when Harley launched that, it didn't really go that well, and they spun it out into a separate brand and kind of put it to the side. I mean, what is it? Why is it just people aren't buying them, or?
Has to be. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I'm going to go into this as a completely ignorant audience member to business. I don't know the finer workings of business, but it must just be that they're not getting the same sort of demand at the moment, which is why I think with cars or just electric companies in general, I think they're at their strongest position when they are partnered with an already established brand. And then it's, you can take a risk on an offshoot rather than just a complete startup, which is obviously quite hard to build something up from zero. I think it must just be that there's just not the demand for bikes as there is for cars, because you do see loads of electric cars on the road, but just I very rarely see. It's quite a novelty when you're riding past. You go, oh, electric bike, and you actually see one in the wild.
Finally, somebody.
Yeah, you don't see them very often at all.
Yeah, it's a fair point. And also, they've got to be super R&D intensive at the moment. Even though they're kind of simple, aren't they, electric bikes? Just a battery and a motor slapped into a motorcycle chassis. It's not rocket science.
No. So when's yours coming out?
No, it is difficult. I'm sure yeah. That's what I'm doing with the SV.
Oh, I see. Right, yeah.
It must be fairly expensive to get started, and then it just doesn't seem like the sales volumes are there at the moment. But I think it's a real shame for Cake, because I walked past their stand at EICMA this year, and it looked really impressive. They've just got all manner of weird and wonderful looking bikes.
True.
The more utilitarian urban type things.
Yeah.
But recently they came out with the Buck, I think it's called, which is more like a dirt bike, enduro bike type thing, but in their typical silver and minimal Scandi styling, and I was like, wow, that looks pretty smart.
They're very unique looking. For me, it really comes down, it just does not make any logical sense to go for the electric bike at the moment. I think a lot of people who are riding bikes, unless you live in one of these high rises where you've got somewhere to plug it in overnight, you can't really leave it outside your house. It's not like you can street park it and still charge it. So where are you going to charge the thing? And they cost more. If you look at Cake, as great as they are, and I did do a bit of research because I was like, maybe that would work for my commuting into London, they're like twice the price of an equivalent sort of speed, power, capacity kind of motorcycle. When I look at, I could get a Husqvarna 401, or I can get a Cake for twice the price. It just doesn't make any sense for me. So maybe there's that.
Do you know what I feel a bit sad about as well? Yeah, naturally the price is going to be a big factor. We were saying this last week with the Honda announcement they're going to build more and more electric bikes by, was it 2035? They had loads of goals for how many they're going to produce and how profitable they'll be, how many they'll sell. We saw with Kawasaki when we went to Motorcycle Live, they had 2 electrics, 2 hybrids, is it now?
Yeah.
And it feels like as you say, the big guns can come in now and possibly afford to develop them and yet sell them at a more reasonable price point. And so all these companies like Cake and Zero, who have to get rounds of funding and they can't afford to sell the bikes at a comparable cost to a normal petrol bike, are kind of falling by the wayside as these big companies just sweep in and do it their way. And maybe that's a bit of a shame, because we had some cool and interesting stuff from the likes of Cake and Zero to some extent. I wouldn't say they were, quite as stylistically impressive or interesting as the Cakes. But yeah, maybe it's going to go more mainstream and we'll just get electric versions of a CB125 now for $8,000 or something like that.
Probably.
That's effectively what Kawasaki have announced, isn't it? A Z E1 and the Ninja E1 or whatever it's called.